Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. We're going to build a bulletproof study guide to help you absolutely ace one of the most common and honestly trickiest SQL interview questions out there. I mean, if you've ever stared at a database error message and just wondered why your perfectly logical query failed, well, you're in the right place. Today, we're tackling the fundamental differences between the where and having clauses. It sounds super simple, right? But getting this wrong is a classic pitfall. It trips up countless candidates during technical interviews. So we're going to decode the behind-the-scenes logic so you literally never make this mistake again.
So looking at our agenda, we'll hit the interview challenge, do a quick spot the error quiz, talk about grouping execution, bring in the having clause, combine it with where, and then finish up with some final takeaways. Basically, we're putting you in the hot seat today to break down exactly how SQL executes your commands, rescuing your queries from those super common traps.
All right, part 1, the SQL interview challenge. Moving to section 2, let's do a quick quiz to spot the error and test your instincts on filtering aggregate data.
Picture this. You're in a high-stakes technical interview. The interviewer hands you a whiteboard marker, right? And they ask you to write a query that finds all genders with an average age over 40. You confidently write out this query. You select the gender and the average age from the employee demographics table. You set your where clause to average age greater than 40, and then you group by gender. Now take a really close look at this setup. Logically, as humans, we read this and we know exactly what it's asking. But to a SQL database, man, this is a massive interview trap. Can you spot why?
And yep, this brilliantly illustrates the problem. Because when you hit execute, your database is going to throw a massive error right back at you. Specifically, invalid use of a group by function. But why exactly? Well, the reason completely lies in the strict order of operations your database follows. You see, you get an error because the aggregate function, that part calculating the average age, it hasn't actually been created yet when the where clause runs. The database is trying to filter by a mathematical average of a group, but the groups don't even exist yet. It's kind of like asking someone to pick the tallest building in a city that literally hasn't been built.
Section 3, before or after grouping. To really understand why this broke, we need to think about database execution using a slightly more real-world analogy. Think about sorting physical office files. Imagine you're an HR manager. You're sitting at a desk with this massive stack of loose employee files. Step 1 is pulling the individual files you actually care about. That's your row-level filtering. Step 2 is putting those individual files into specific manila folders, grouped by gender. That right there is your group by phase. And step 3 is looking at the folders as a whole, calculating the average age of the files inside each folder, and then tossing out the folders that just don't meet our rule of averaging over 40. So, the absolute crucial point here is that you cannot filter a group average on your Office files if you haven't actually grouped the files into their folders yet. The where clause acts as step 1. It only looks at the loose papers. It has absolutely no idea what the folders will eventually look like.
All right, section 4, the having clause solution. Let's bring in the hero of our explainer to solve this exact timing issue.
Notice how clearly we can split the duties of our filtering tools here. On the left side, we've got the where clause. This is your row-level filter. It occurs strictly before any grouping happens. It's only looking at the raw individual rows of data. But then, on the right side, we have the having clause. This is your aggregate function filter. It kicks into action strictly after the grouping has occurred. It looks at the calculated summaries, things like averages, counts, or sums, that your group by command just created.
So here's how we fix our process. We pull the data from the table, we tell SQL to group by gender first to create those folders, and then we send them down the conveyor belt. At the very end of the line, we use the having clause as our final quality check, inspecting the folders and only keeping the ones where the average age is greater than 40. Boom! We are finally respecting the database's order of operations.
Section 5, combining where and having. For the ultimate interview flex, you really need to know how to use both of these clauses in the exact same query without creating a massive conflict.
Let's say our interviewer gives us a new scenario using an employee salary table. They want to find all manager roles where the average salary for that role is over $75,000. Here's exactly how we break it down. First, we use our where clause, where occupation like manager. This happens first, filtering out the individual rows, so we're only looking at employees with manager in their title. All the non-managers, they're immediately thrown out. Second, we apply our group by occupation. This takes all those surviving manager rows and groups them by their specific titles, like regional manager or project manager. Finally, step 3, we use having average salary greater than $75,000.
Now that our manager rows are neatly grouped, the database calculates the average salary for each group and just filters out any role that doesn't meet that 75,000 threshold. By combining them, we create this highly efficient query that filters early and often.
Section 6. Final interview takeaways. Let's wrap up this study session with the absolute most important concept you need to walk away with today.
The primary takeaway here is that you must think like the database compiler. Where filters the individual pieces of paper, and having filters the grouped folders. But mastering where and having is really just the beginning. It cracks open a much larger conversation about how databases actually process information. So I'm going to leave you with this. If SQL strictly executes where before group by and having after group by, what other hidden execution orders, like order by or even select itself, are silently breaking your queries right now? Understanding this flow is the true secret to writing bug-free code and absolutely dominating your technical interviews. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning how your code really runs beneath the surface.